In 1258, the Tigris River ran black, not with mud, not with storm water, but with ink. For weeks, the waters of the Tigris carried the shredded remains of hundreds of thousands of books, pages torn from manuscripts, priceless texts dissolved into the current. Scholars who had devoted their lives to knowledge watched from the riverbanks as centuries of human understanding floated past them and disappeared. This was the end of the House of Wisdom, the greatest library the world had ever seen, a place where the sum of human knowledge was gathered, translated, preserved, and advanced, while Europe stumbled through the Dark Ages. And when it fell, the world lost something it has never fully recovered. 800 years before that day, Baghdad was nothing, a small village on the banks of the Tigris, far from the centers of power. Then, in 762 AD, the Abbasid Caliph al-Mansur chose this spot to build his capital. He called it Madinat al-Salam, the City of Peace. Within 50 years, it became the largest city in the world. Its population reached over 1 million people, more than any city in Europe. Its markets stretched for miles. Its palaces dazzled travelers from China, India, Africa, and Scandinavia. But Baghdad was not just a city of wealth. It was a city of knowledge. At its heart stood the House of Wisdom, Beit al-Hikmah. Founded by Caliph Harun al-Rashid and expanded by his son al-Ma'mun, it was not merely a library. It was a university, a translation institute, an observatory, and a research center. Centuries before anything like it existed in Europe, scholars from every corner of the world gathered there. Christians, Jews, Muslims, Zoroastrians, Hindus. They did not come to argue, they came to translate. Greek philosophy, Persian astronomy, Indian mathematics, Chinese medicine. Everything that had been discovered by every civilization before them was brought to Baghdad, translated into Arabic, and preserved. If a text existed anywhere in the world, the scholars of Baghdad wanted it. Imagine, for a moment, what Europe was like at this time. The year is 830 AD. In much of Europe, literacy is confined to monasteries. The great works of Aristotle and Plato have been lost, or survive only in fragmented Latin translations. The idea of a public library, of a research institution, of scholars debating freely across religious lines, these do not exist. In Baghdad, meanwhile, scholars are translating Aristotle into Arabic. They are preserving the works of Hippocrates and Galen. They are developing algebra. The word itself comes from the Arabic al-Jabr. Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi, working at the House of Wisdom, gives the world the concept of algorithms. His name, Latinized, becomes algorithmi. We use his work every time we turn on a computer. The Banu Musa brothers write 20 books on engineering, including descriptions of mechanical devices that would not be seen in Europe for another 500 years. Al-Kindi, called the philosopher of the Arabs, writes hundreds of original works on cryptography, philosophy, and optics. And the House of Wisdom does not just preserve the past, it advances it. Scholars there correct errors in Greek astronomy. They improve the astrolabe. They calculate the circumference of the Earth with remarkable accuracy. For 500 years, Baghdad is the intellectual center of the world. But empires do not last forever. By the 13th century, the Abbasid Caliphate had weakened. Baghdad was still wealthy, still cultured, but it was a shadow of its former self. And in the east, a new power was rising: the Mongols. Under Genghis Khan and his successors, the Mongol Empire had swept across Asia, conquering everything in its path. City after city fell, populations were massacred, civilizations were erased. In 1256, Genghis's grandson, Hulagu Khan, turned his attention to the Middle East. He destroyed the Assassins, the legendary order of the Alamut, and then marched toward Baghdad. The caliph in Baghdad, al-Mustasim, did not take the threat seriously. He believed Baghdad was too great to fall. He believed the Mongols were just another barbarian army that could be bought off or dismissed. He was wrong. Hulagu demanded surrender. The caliph refused and insulted the Mongol leader. That sealed Baghdad's fate. January 29th, 1258. The Mongol army surrounds Baghdad. Hulagu has brought with him siege engines, Chinese engineers, and an army of over 100,000 men. The caliph's forces are no match. After 12 days of siege, the walls are breached. What followed is one of the great catastrophes of human history. The Mongols poured into Baghdad. They killed indiscriminately. For 17 days, the city was sacked. The population, estimated at over 1 million, was slaughtered. Some historians say the death toll reached 800,000. The caliph himself was captured. The Mongols rolled him in a carpet and trampled him with horses. They believed spilling royal blood would bring bad luck, so they found another way. And then they turned to the House of Wisdom. The House of Wisdom was not just a building. It was the accumulated knowledge of centuries, hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, irreplaceable works of philosophy, science, medicine, and history. The Mongols threw them into the Tigris. For weeks, the river ran black with ink. So many books were thrown into the water that, according to contemporary accounts, the river could not carry them all. The pages formed a bridge across the Tigris, a bridge of knowledge, now destroyed. One story, perhaps apocryphal but widely repeated, says that the Mongols used the leather bindings of the books to make sandals for their horses. Another says the water of the Tigris remained dark for months. What is not apocryphal is the scale of the destruction. The House of Wisdom was not just looted, it was systematically annihilated. The library, the observatory, the translation halls, all destroyed. The scholars who survived the massacre fled. Those who stayed were killed. The Great Experiment, a city built on knowledge, where scholars from every background worked together, was over. We will never know everything that was lost in Baghdad. Many of the texts destroyed were the only copies in existence. Ancient Greek works that had survived nowhere else, lost. Persian histories that documented millennia of civilization, gone. Indian mathematical texts, burned. But the loss was not just about individual books. It was about momentum. Baghdad had been the engine of intellectual progress for 500 years. When it fell, that engine stopped. Some scholars argue that the destruction of Baghdad set the Islamic world back centuries. Others argue it set the entire world back, that the progress that eventually emerged in Renaissance Europe would have happened far earlier if the House of Wisdom had survived. We will never know. What we do know, after 1258, the center of intellectual gravity shifted. The scholars who survived fled to Cairo, to Damascus, to Anatolia. But they never rebuilt what was lost. The great age of Islamic science, which had produced advances that dwarfed those of contemporary Europe, came to an end. For centuries, the story of the House of Wisdom was told only in fragments. European historians, when they bothered to acknowledge it, dismissed it as a curiosity, a brief flowering in an otherwise backward region. Western textbooks, until very recently, did not mention it at all. Students learned about the burning of the Library of Alexandria, but never about Baghdad. Why? Because the story does not fit the narrative we have been told. The narrative that progress moved in a straight line from Greece to Rome to Europe. The narrative that the Islamic world contributed nothing to the sciences. The narrative that the Mongols were simply savages who destroyed cities, without acknowledging the advanced civilization they destroyed. The House of Wisdom was erased not by fire alone, but by silence. Today, there is no House of Wisdom in Baghdad. The site where it once stood is a stretch of riverbank with nothing to mark what was lost. But in recent years, scholars have begun to rebuild, not the building, but the memory. Digitization projects are recovering texts that survived in other libraries. Historians are reconstructing the scope of what was destroyed. And slowly, the world is remembering that for 500 years, the center of human knowledge was not in Europe. It was in Baghdad. The Tigris no longer runs black with ink. But the loss remains. What would the world look like today if that river had never turned black? If the House of Wisdom had survived? If the scholars of Baghdad had continued their work uninterrupted? We cannot know. But we can remember what was taken from us and ask ourselves what we are losing today.